right? I got my spine, hips, then my knees are loaded, right? And it should not be the first knee to load. So just long story short, it's never one quick answer. That's what I also want to tell people. Like, you obviously listen to me talk, you're like, lady, just give me one answer. Well, I'm not going to, because that's would be too easy.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe here with Doug Larson, and we're down here in San Diego at Movement RX hanging out with Dr. Theresa Larson and Anders Varner. Today we're going to be talking about the knee and all the things about the knee. I'm interested in finding out about what actually causes knee pain in the first place, because, you know, we got like the front of the knee and the side of the knee and the back of the knee, and people a lot of times go, oh, I have knee pain, and I'm just wanting to know like what causes it and what areas of the knee that might be happening.
Yeah, I feel like with all injuries, people tend to manage symptoms instead of root causes. So, you know, I'm really curious from your perspective, like what causes knee pain? Like what upstream and downstream joints, you know, maybe compensating, or what pre-existing conditions could contribute to knee pain? Like, how does someone get knee pain? And then when they have knee pain, like, what do they do about it? How do they still get a good training effect? And how do they still make progress even if they're having some knee pain, even if it's going to be a chronic long-term knee pain thing where, you know, your knee's just messed up, but still you have goals that you want to accomplish and you want to still be athletic? What do you do? Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've had both of you on the show previously, but in case people haven't watched that yet, can you fill us in on your background, please?
Yeah.
Go for it, Anders.
There it is.
Oh,
my name's Anders Varner. I am a strength coach.
Ninja.
Strength
Theresa
ninja.
can call me a ninja. I guess I found the strength and conditioning thing like 13 years old, so 21 years later now. Opened a gym.
21.
Opened a gym in 2010, San Diego Athletics in Pacific Beach, California. We sent 70-plus athletes to the regional in 6 years. I competed there 4 times, and I was John Cena's training partner for 3.5 years, which is pretty awesome. So been around the block, and along that journey, I have.
That's the only thing people are going to remember about you, by
That's
the way.
right.
That's cool.
The WWE guy that you had on the show, remember that guy?
Some people don't even know he's a wrestler anymore, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he trains really well, by the way. Like I've seen some of his training. Like
he's a really,
he does
really
some
smart
legit,
guy.
some legit training. Like,
Yeah, he's really, really smart when it comes to strength and conditioning. It's just been like his whole life, really. And to do it for 16 years in the WWE, you better take pretty good care of yourself. But along the way, I probably had every injury known to man. And after...
Did you ever have your wisdom teeth taken out?
I did, but not a training protocol for that. So that's really been kind of me chasing this human potential thing as much as I possibly could, getting to the end of it and realizing, whoa, I'm going to have to reassess where I'm at. I got to get healthy joints. I need to figure out what is like the longevity piece of this. Dr. T was my physical therapist and in charge of making sure my brain didn't go crazy, and showed me the way. And this is how we partnered up, because her story is even cooler than mine.
What is the way?
The way is, well, let me tell you about the way. Well, after I give you a little bit of my bio.
Well, I figured the way would be embedded in your personal life story.
Yeah, so kind of. Everyone has their own way.
It's a very chop wood, carry water thing coming our way, I feel like. Lift weights, swing kettlebells, repeat.
Stay
present.
Stay present. But I thankfully did get to meet Anders on my journey of growing Movement RX, because I was in his gym, San Diego Athletics, where I also met John Cena, and he gave me some great advice of, you just need to have fun when you train. I was like, yeah, you do. So do things that are fun. Okay, like beat people up. And but my background, I'm the shortest in my family. 6'1". I like to give people a context. Like, I come from a family of giants. But with that, I had to stick up for myself a lot and joined the Marine Corps after college. Played professional softball for a year as a fast pitcher, so I know what it's like to be dominant on one side versus the other, and very developed on one side versus the other. After playing softball, I decided I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And after the Marine Corps, it was like, what am I going to do? I was an engineer officer. Like, do I blow shit up the rest of my life, or am I going to do engineering, which I thought was very boring. I loved working with the Marines, but that kind of work just wasn't like, oh, my dream. So, but I did have a passion for medicine and fitness. Like, my mother was, unfortunately in and out of the hospital a lot when I was young. She died of breast cancer when I was really young. And I was like, I wanted to learn the medical side, but do I really want to be in the medicine? Do I want to be prescribing medicine?
You mean
I felt
drugs?
Yes, drugs.
Medicine and drugs are not always the same thing.
Right, you're right. So,
so the choice is to be a doctor or not?
Yeah, so a doctor of medicine, and I thought, like, okay, well, I'm more into fitness, so I'm going to go that route, but what can I do where I have the license to really help someone medically and on the fitness side? Mm-hmm. So PT was that fix for me. So I went to school and came into DPT and started my own business shortly thereafter, because the real world of physical therapy traditionally just didn't fit me. I don't really fit in. I feel like a lot of different, in the Marine Corps, I always felt like a misfit too. I had my tribe, but very free spirited, which isn't necessarily the thing that, like, it's group think focused, like do what the group does. Whereas I like to do things a little bit differently.
I ran into a similar problem in the Navy. Yeah.
So
military loves free spirits.
Yeah, no. So I got in trouble a lot, and not doing anything crazy, just doing things like creative. And in PT school, I felt like myself falling into that same, you need to work this way for 5 years until you can do this, and for these kind of people, and make sure you have a mentor. And I was like, peace out. After meeting Kelly Starrett, seeing what he was doing, getting involved with that group, I was like, I am not doing traditional PT. Yeah. So hence started MobilityWOD, and then got to meet Anders and published my book Warrior, which is about my experience in the Marine Corps and my experience just struggling with abusing physical fitness, actually. Abusing physical fitness and abusing food, which I know a lot of people who are listening might be able to relate to. So.
Yeah, we did a show together a couple months ago called something to do with the low back. You guys have the low back fix, which is an online thing that you do. And so if you have low back pain or you're interested in that, refer back to that episode. I'm not sure what the numbers off the top of my head. I should have looked it up, but just Google that and go find it. Or maybe we can Google it during the halftime break or something like that. But today we're going to talk about knees. You're a physical therapist, you're a strength coach. Like, you guys understand all different aspects of the body. Today we're talking about knees. So back to my question from earlier, like, how do you keep your knees healthy through decades of strength training? Anders, you said you've been training for 20 plus years and you had every injury known to man. Like, do you, in retrospect, understand how you got those injuries, and then now you understand how to keep from getting them in the future?
Yeah, so the majority of the problems that we've run into with people that are chasing performance is the performance gets in the way of the longevity. It's a really simple thing to happen every single day, right?
Yeah, training to compete is not necessarily healthy.
Yeah, I think you actually, at Worlds this weekend, had a really awesome quote of, like, weightlifting's really healthy for you until you decide to be, like, really good at it.
Or unless you want to compete.
Yeah, unless you want to compete in it.
Our buddy Lauren used to say that, someone who coached me and Mike back in graduate school.
Yeah, so I remember being at a weightlifting competition and dropping a 205-pound snatch on my big toe, and regionals was like 3 months away. I don't have time to rehab things like this. So what happens is you start favoring one side of your body over the other. You start ingraining some really bad movement patterns. I feel like the majority of the time when we're starting to look at knees, the hip's a problem, the ankle's a problem, the knee just gets beat up. Dr. T has an awesome saying that the knee is just the middle child. It often gets forgotten until it gets really loud and starts bothering you. But if we can work on the movement patterns and make sure we have the proper mobility and stability above and below the joint, things start to work out a lot easier for people.
Yeah, so the knee is technically, if you look at a joint-by-joint approach, it's a stability joint. And it is the biggest joint in the body. But it is between the hip and the ankle, which need more mobility. So if those are limited in any way if they're limited in any way, it's going to affect the knee. And it doesn't usually affect it. It affects it over time, just through poor repetition, right? Squatting with toes turning out, knees coming in. Hips not able to rotate externally and even internally, right? If you injured your big toe, for example, the great toe, and right, that great toe needs to get 60 degrees of extension when you walk. Well, if you don't have that, from jamming your big toe, well, what's going to happen is you're not going to get that extension. You're not going to get that hip extension that goes along with it, and that knee's going to suffer as well. And/or squatting, having a limitation in the big toe can cause you to shift away from that injured side onto, so putting more bias on the other side, then all of a sudden your knee starts to hurt on that side or hip, and you blame that, whereas the actual cause is, oh, you jammed your big toe 3 months ago and you never quite paid attention to how you moved and compensated. Your brain will immediately compensate when you start to have pain, right? Let's say you just tweaked something, your knee, your hip, your big toe, your low back will automatically, your body, until you rewire it, will compensate. And sometimes that compensation will cause you to be pain-free over time, like it will. But you're still compensating with your movement. So over time, something else is going to give.
So compensation is basically just poor technique is one other way to put it in some case.
Some cases, yes. So your body will naturally compensate because it's designed to move. So it's going to figure out a way to move. Like with the adaptive population I work with, it's amazing. You don't have a knee. Well, if you don't have a lower leg, well, your body's going to figure out how to squat again. It needs to be taught. But for those of us with legs, like you want to use them, you want to be as balanced as possible. So learn how you need to pay attention to how you're compensating, so you're actually not taking weight off that injured side and you're actually loading it effectively. And that's where rehab comes in. You're regressing things until you get to a certain point where you can start to progress again. But most people don't like to regress. They just want to jump back in, rest, and jump back into where they were. So going back to your comment on like the cause of knee pain, right? The knee is like the middle child. It's the stability joint. So it's going to start to scream at you if the ankles are limited and if the hip's limited. And even if the low back starts to overextend every time you squat or hinge, well, that puts immediately, if you just throw your butt out right now, that immediately makes your knees bend. Then go ahead and squat down. You can't help but load the knees more. So automatically you're getting more of a shearing motion. You do that 1,000 times without knowing it because you don't know how to squat. Well, eventually the anterior knee, that patella tendon, that quad tendon that the doctor tells is your diagnosis, isn't actually the problem. It's because you couldn't set up your spine correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's counterintuitive. You know, people go, oh, I've got knee pain. And then, you know, I've had friends go get even therapy, and they're like, they didn't even address my knee. I was like, well, what'd they do? They worked on my ankles and my hips, but not even my knee. I'm like, oh, well, unfortunately, they didn't explain to him why that's happening.
They didn't educate him.
But yeah, it's rarely when someone has a knee injury, it's rarely the knee that's the problem. What are some lifestyle things, like one that always jumps out to me is women who wear high heels all the time have hard, their ankle mobility sucks. And they end up with knee problems, and you watch them squat and kind of cringe. It's like, oh, fuck, you're gonna be blowing that knee out. It's only a matter of time. What are some other things that people are doing that are like setting them up for failure?
The most common one, we all deal with way too much stress in a seated position throughout the day. It's the most obvious thing that's reaching the broadest spectrum of people right now. We wake up stressed out, take all this stress onto our body, but we have no way of releasing it. Kind of the founding principles of all of the programs we've created is just this idea of breath, balance, and behavior patterns, right? So not just the importance of the breath and turning on like the intra-abdominal muscles, but down regulation, getting the tension out of the body, leading to just more balance, not only just external stress and how we manage that, transitioning into kind of whatever person we need to be, whether that's at work, at home, whatever that is, but being able to create some space in those transitions and then creating behavior patterns that allow us to live a healthy life. So the gym doesn't need to be this place where we go kick our own ass every single day as hard as we possibly can. We can create this balance in our life where some days we slow down a little bit. Like some days we're going to lift and try and PR. You have the potential to go in and go as hard as you possibly want and then lift as much as you possibly can every single day. But if we instill the ability and the skill to slow down, be mindful of where we're at, be mindful of like what external stressors are bothering us, then we have the opportunity to make a better decision once we get underneath the bar. Like maybe today a goblet squat's way better because I slept 3 hours, didn't really eat well, and had a stressful day. Probably a little bit better decision. We can work on some movement patterns. You're still getting the same benefit of handling external load, whatever training stimulus you're looking for. It's just, we don't need to just layer stress on stress over and over and over again without having this ability to train how slow we're going. Nobody ever thinks about like, man, 1 breath in 1 minute, that was really cool. Like, I'm really getting good at this slowing down thing. Like, it's really unsexy to learn how to go slow, but people talk about training their weaknesses. Well, your biggest weakness is you're injured all the time because you're dealing with way too much stress and you don't know how to relieve it. So working on that down regulation piece and everything, just starting with the breath, then we can start to layer on mobility and stability and getting into some more like some better movement and behavior patterns.
So some specifics for like lifestyle things. So high heels, obviously, super sexy to wear. They make your calves look amazing. However, when you go to squat, it causes a very anterior knee driven movement. It's really hard to squat keeping your heels down, right? And like loading your hips more. It's going to kind of look like just bending over at the waist. So it really, when people think squatting, and
it works at the club.
It totally works.
So well.
So yeah, I
Different goals.
Right. So in high heels, it's, I mean, we technically.
I'm not talking about squatting in heels. I'm just talking about walking in heels.
Okay, yeah.
But
Right, okay. Well, yeah.
we want the girls to keep squatting in heels.
Okay. Yeah. I want, them to be empowered. Not have to need that. Okay. Anyway, so heels, yes, not so awesome. So if you find yourself having, like, you're in a work environment where you have to wear heels, like, bring flats to work. Try that. I know it doesn't make your calves look as sexy, but freaking do calf raises then, or there are other ways to also make your calves look sexy. So like he mentioned sitting. So what is the biggest implication with sitting is, it makes us very sedentary. It doesn't get as much blood flow to tissues that need to have blood flow, like the glutes, right? You sit on the glutes, 25, 30 minutes of that, then you decrease the ability to, like, the energy to those glutes. Like, it doesn't mean the glutes just turn off, but they definitely aren't going to work as effectively.
Right.
So they start to adapt to this more lengthened position.
Adapt to being flat.
Right, so laminated, butt lamination. so then you go to get up, and the very thing that's supposed to support your low back and those knees, right, is not actually going to be working effectively for you. So then you go straight to the gym, you do your workout, you do your knee-driven squats, you do your elliptical, whatever you do maybe CrossFit, but you haven't fired up those glutes enough during the day because you've been sitting so much. Well, the load's going to be taken out on that knee. So that's the big one too. Like runners, even if, let's say, you're not a lifter and you're a runner listening to this, most likely you are a lifter and a runner. Like just getting up and just going for a run, and especially if you're a heel striker, if you strike and you're wearing these pretty cushy shoes, right, versus more minimalist shoes, that's going to put more ground reaction force through the knee as well as the low back. So running form matters. Walking form matters. Like, are you turning, are you walking with your toes turned out? Do you think that's cool? Because it's actually not cool, and it's not really effective on the knee. So by turning your toes out, your arches are going to not get the same kind of input. They're going to actually become flatter over time. I mean, there are people with rigid arches, so no matter what you do, they're going to always have a rigid arch. But still, mechanically, it does not put useful stress into that knee. So we're designed to walk with our toes forward. We're designed to have an arch in our foot, right? If we start walking toed out or being lazy about how we stand without having an arch, well, eventually there's going to be pressure, especially on the inside of that knee. So you're going to start getting inside of the knee pain, and or you're going to get pain on the outside due to the tissue becoming tight. But then you're going to, complain of that when the real problem is, well, your feet aren't strong anymore. You walk toed out. So, I mean, the list kind of can be long in terms of lifestyle implications. I think people just, the unfortunate thing about knee pain is that it really does take people away from doing what they love, just like low back pain. That's why I think, I don't like to talk about pain as much, or we don't like to talk about pain as much. We like to talk about function. It is something that limits people from doing what they love, and it doesn't have to, because simple things can be adjusted to make your life amazing. Like my older brother, 6'8", likes to run, knee pain all the time, right? He sits in a plane, like he's 6'8", so he's not exactly able to sit up straight, but like sitting all day long and then going for a run with cushy shoes, heel striking, like yeah, it's a disaster waiting to happen. When little things could be adjusted, the shoes could be adjusted, right? Working on squatting. Well, now that you've been sitting for that long, right, and you haven't been working on your ankles or your bottom of your feet, well, let's say your ankles are limited. Over time, that's going to work its way up the chain. And usually the joint that needs the stability, that needs the control, is the one that's going to scream at you.
So much of, you talk about what's the lifestyle problems that we focus on movement all the time. Most people don't think about sitting down as a form of movement, but you sitting there talking, I am squeezing my butt a little bit more. I notice my arches. Like, movement should be this practice that we're cultivating all day long. It's not just going to the gym and are my glutes turned on. Well, are your glutes turned on when you're standing? You start talking and all of a sudden I have to turn my feet out, make a better arch. Like, these things should be practiced throughout the day, cultivating better movement and being aware of where your body is in space. It doesn't have to be just the gym, because that's where you're adding intensity to this practice. But find a way that you can think about this throughout the day, and you're going to be much more mindful of the way you move.
Yeah, I mean, that adds a level of presence. If you're putting your attention into what's happening in your physical body, you're thinking less, which is actually a good thing, we're finding.
Yeah, it's the mindfulness. So worked with a mindful, this guy that runs Medicine Mind, a biofeedback therapist, Jim Cahill. He's got a mindfulness-based meditation practice that he's taught me, and it's being, part of it's being still and quiet, right? Being still and quiet, your body can find balance. But in movement, shut out the noise for, turn off the music, be present in your body. Go a little bit slower. Things that we have on this program that we've designed, go a little slower, turn down the music, do less reps, and do them really freaking well. Where in that range of motion? Most people are, if you look at length tension curve of muscle tissue, right? People are just movement. You're usually weaker at the end ranges of the motion. So the bottom of your squat. Yeah. The middle of the squat could be pretty janky, but the bottom of the squat, where do people bottom out usually? It's at the bottom, or at the top they just overextend, right? Because they don't know where that neutral position is. A lot of that can just be learned. But at the bottom, you need a lot of strength to be able to hold that weight, even just body weight. So being more focused and present in your body, it actually also creates happiness. I mean, we're big on mental health here, and I believe, just from working with veterans and having my own stress issues and having had a former mental illness as an eating disorder, the more mindful I am with the way I eat, the more mindful I am with the way I choose to live my life, the way I choose to move makes me a happier person, because it makes me more present. And the more present you are, you could be freaking cleaning toilets, the more present you are, the more happy you're going to be. Mm-hmm. And that's actually a research that there's studies up about that. So whereas, performance junkies, I am a performance junkie in my own way. When I get into training, I want to compete. However, I have longevity in my mind too. While I want to compete, I also want to be healthy for a really long time. If I want to do a Spartan race or any other kind of competition when I'm 50, 60, then I want to be able to do that. So I need to adjust my training accordingly.
I think one of the things that makes it tough for people to go into a mindfulness practice is that the moment you start doing it, you actually find out that you have to cut about half the things out of your life.
Yeah.
Because
and it's really
everyone's
hard.
doing too much.
Yeah, it's really hard. One of the things I talk to, and Anders and I talk about this all the time, is we now having a kid too, I want time to go slow. We don't have much time, actually. I think life is a marathon, but we really don't have much time. And when the time I do have, I want to make it really awesome. I don't want to just go through life stressed out, waiting for Friday so I can go drink my face off. That's not what I want to do.
Right. Anders is no, don't knock it.
Yeah. I want to, you ask people, we walk around military base and people are God, I wish it was Friday. I wish it was Friday. It's no, I want to, it's Monday. Monday is an awesome day. I want the day, I want to be present in each moment. I don't want to overplan. And I'm always battling that as a business owner. And then with movement, right? Look at programs. This is one of the problems that we see with programs, is that they over-program. And you can speak to this. Is then how can someone be mindful when they're just going as fast as possible to get through in an hour training?
I mean, I've walked into a gym to guest coach before, and they're like, "Oh, we want you to coach the workout on the board." It's been a long time since I've done this, but I've walked in and gone, "You want me to put that into an hour?"
Yeah,
It's like 3 hours of
constant.
training.
Yeah.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
And it is common. Like, very few things need to be done.
You're not able to coach any of it. You can demo the movement and say, okay, go grab your kettlebells and everyone line up
cheer.
right here. And okay, look at the clock. Okay, here we
Yeah, and
go.
then I can watch.
Okay, buzzer went off. Next thing, and you're just like shuffling people through this
Right,
thing,
and watching 90% of the class destroying themselves and going, "Oh, fuck."
pretending you didn't see how bad it is.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh, fuck."
Turn up the
going.
music.
It's like,
And it takes a while to see the results. Like if you come in and do Fran, for example, 3 minutes later, you're laid out. You're like, wow, I really, really did something right there. Like, I'm totally gassed. This must have been good for me. Let's sit still for 10 minutes. Like, how many people can literally, they talk about this week is flying by, this year is flying by. Well, okay, why don't you sit still for a minute and do nothing? Oh, I'll get bored. Like, I don't know where we're at right now. Like, we should learn how to go slower a little bit and add this little mindfulness practice, or just have that, watch your brain move, and then decide if that's an important thing. And then you can kind of proceed forward once you have this skill set.
yeah. You guys have a system specifically for correcting knee issues.
Yes.
I want to find out more about that after we take a break. Plus,
Sounds good.
we actually got some questions coming through Instagram Live.
Okay.
And I think we'll answer some of those questions. I don't
Okay.
think we are going to answer some of those questions.
Sweet.
And then, if you're not subscribed to us on iTunes, was it iTunes or Instagram?
I think it's Instagram.
It's Instagram.
iTunes Live.
There's too many
I wish.
things.
Yeah.
Too many
I
things.
words.
As we're talking about this
Yeah,
mindset
Instagram.
thing, we can't even figure out where you can find us.
Make sure you're subscribed. That way you can see
Just
this
turn-
kind of stuff. Maybe
Yes.
interact with us on the show.
Cool.
Thanks for watching the show. If you love weightlifting and you want to improve your snatch, clean, and jerk, you can go to flightweightlifting.com. We have a free 54-page ebook. It has sample programming, videos on how to improve your technique, as well as tons of other tips to help you improve your weightlifting. If you want that book, go to flightweightlifting.com.
And we're back with Dr. Theresa Larson, Anders Varner. We're talking about knee pain. And first, we want to get into the system you guys have created. But first, we're going to be answering some questions from the Instagram Lives.
Sweet.
First question is sciatica.
Yeah.
What is it, and how do we get rid of it? Because it sounds terrible.
So sciatica is like if a doctor prescribes or says you have sciatica, they pretty much don't know
Fire
what's
them.
going on because it's a symptom. Sciatica is just leg pain. So where is it coming from? Is it coming from the low back? Is it coming from the hip joint? It's usually one of those two areas, but which segment? Where is it going down to? All of those things matter. So this is something that you want to address on our low back fix program, because in the low back fix program, sciatica is a big thing that we treat with that. Like,
So sciatica is
Obviously.
not a thing.
it's
It's
a
a
symptom.
So a doctor
of-
said, you go, "Hey doc, it hurts right here," and he goes, "You got sciatica," and you're like, "Thanks doc, here's some money."
Yeah, basically. So what happens is
Fucking asshole.
That's the whole system.
So traditionally,
20 minutes or less.
seriously, so traditionally, because of the way insurances work now, like you go see the doctor and they see you for 5 minutes. They might even put your hands on you. They might not put their hands on you, and you say you have leg pain, right? And you might describe it as like a numbness or maybe like some kind of achy neural tension, like tension where it doesn't feel quite the same as the other side. Well, they're going to say, oh, you have leg pain, sciatica. Maybe they might even say you have low back pain. That's what they're going to give the PT. And the PT's like, what am I going to, that's not helpful. That doesn't tell me, this is just a symptom. Low back pain is a symptom of something going on in the back, right? An instability in the hips or the low back. The sciatica is a symptom. It's leg pain. Where is it coming from is what matters. So that's where a good musculoskeletal therapist or movement specialist can go in and say, hey, you know what? Your spine actually, your low back, there's an instability there. That's what the low back treats. Your hips don't have enough rotation. That's what the low back treats, right? So we work on so sciatica is a very common thing, especially for weightlifters, just because of bilateral deficits that we all have a bilateral deficit to some degree, right? But then like how
I'm
big
perfect.
is it? Yeah, sure.
Perfect symmetry.
You want to
I have a liver on both sides.
So
check that out.
Wow. I didn't think about that for a second. I was like, wait, you're only supposed to have one.
Would you say
You have two kidneys?
The implication is that's impossible to be perfectly
Right.
symmetrical because the body's not built like that.
Well,
We
he said-
both fell for it
well, he
for a
said-
second. It was like, you said it so
He
stone
did say
cold.
a liver on both sides.
One liver.
Both sides.
Okay, let's go back to the sciatica.
Rewind.
Yes, the sciatica is a symptom, and you're going to want to treat that cause, which is hip, low back, oftentimes focused. And that's where on the low back program we have worked on those major impairments that come with, that result in things like leg pain, low back instability that kind of lead to the sciatica or instabilities in the low back.
You know what? I hear people say they have sciatica fairly frequently. Y'all should just come out with a sciatica thing.
Yeah, treat sciatica. Well, here's the thing, though.
Can you even say that?
Can I?
I don't know. You did say it, but
So I don't.
legally.
So legally, medically, I don't diagnose someone I don't give them a medical diagnosis. I can say.
But if they go to a doctor and they give them money and they say you got sciatica, then they can.
Right.
Then you can help them.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then the doctor says go to see a PT, and the PT's like, what am I going to do with this? This just means leg pain. Where is it coming from? So the PT then goes in and does some should go in and actually look at above and below, look at the low back, the spine, how it moves, how it loads, and then the cause is never just one thing. That's the thing. People just want a quick fix. They want to, how am I going to fix this sciatica? Well, it could be because your ankle is limited. Right? The sciatic nerve goes all the way down to the bottom of the foot. It turns into the tibial nerve and then the plantar nerves over time. So it's a long, I got long legs. I got a long sciatic nerve path. Well, if my ankle's limited in any way.
I wasn't going to say anything. But
yeah.
She got a long sciatic nerve.
Long sciatic nerve.
So, you got to look at all of the components that could be putting restriction on that sciatic nerve. It stems from the low back all the way down to the toes. So where is it limited? And that's where a good movement specialist can go in and look, right? And that needs to be treated. Because if you just you get medication to treat the symptom, well, your ankle's still limited, your hip rotation's still limited, your back is still unstable.
You sound like a limited human being.
Yeah, you sound like
No one wants that.
you just want a freaking Band-Aid. And that the doctors most likely, because of the way practices are these days and reimbursement rates, they only, even in physical therapy, unfortunately, these days that take a lot of insurances, there's no time to actually treat the cause effectively. So long story short, check out the low back fix.
Yeah.
Well,
Boom!
Band-Aids sell a hell of a lot better than cut prevention kits.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. No,
Seriously.
Yeah,
So much of what we do is
I
really just
know.
uncovering the natural way people were supposed to move. They've developed all of these things that lead to this sciatica problem. It's like, well, what happened? Well, you probably stood on two legs too long, lifting too much weight, developed a bunch of compensation problems. It's like, let's just break this down a little bit, get you on one leg, do some of this single leg work, maybe calm the nervous system, and then see where we need some mobility and stability, which gets into the next one, which is the...
Actually, before we move on to the next point, what really is the difference between doing single leg work versus bilateral work? Why is it important to have some balance there?
So bilateral deficit, this was one of the things that you uncovered for me back in the day that was so wild, but if you can deadlift, call it 500 pounds, and that's your 1 rep max, there's a good chance that on a single leg, you're going to be able to deadlift more than 220 or 250 pounds.
Yeah.
Had to do the math there. But you're stronger on one leg. Your brain's focused on this one leg, and you're able to see which side is stronger, which side's doing the most work. The goal of your body when you're doing a back squat is to stand up so you don't get crushed by that weight. It doesn't matter how you stand up. Your body's just not trying to die underneath that barbell. So it's going to find the biggest muscles. It's going to find the strongest muscles. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to find 50% on your right and 50% on your left. There could be 75% of it on your right side because that's your strong leg. And your body loves these imbalances, right? So it's not thinking we really need to train this system as a whole. It's no, let's stand up. And you're going to, over time, develop the imbalances. Your body's going to recognize, hey, that's my strong side. So when I'm in danger, we need to default to that side. And the problems just get worse and worse and worse. 1% at a time, but over your training life, it's going to add up to a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a bilateral deficit is normal to a certain degree. And I would say within 5 to 8%, right? You're going to have a little bit stronger side than the other, but when it becomes pretty gross, like over 10% difference in strength, well, that's a problem. And a lot of people that come to see me in the clinic have no idea they have a deficit.
Yeah.
So you get them on one leg, you're like, they look great on both, and then all of a sudden you watch them do a single leg squat or a single leg deadlift or press overhead belly up, one side versus the other with their arm, and they're like, whoa, I did not even realize that I felt so much weaker. Well, your brain, like he was saying, wants to go to what's strong. It will, because it's designed to move.
Yeah, that the belly up or bottoms up kettlebell presses, that'll get loud real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of our assessment pieces for the shoulder.
All right, next question. Behind the knee, behind the knee pain, the person on Instagram was stating that is stretching the hamstring enough?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't be stretching the hamstring to start anyway. We want to know what happened to your knee. Did you overextend it? Oftentimes people can overextend their knee from doing like a forceful extension. Maybe it's from an Olympic lift or running, sprinting, right? You can strain some of the muscles behind that knee. It could be a symptom like sciatica and they don't even know it, right? Sciatica does cause behind the knee pain, right? So you can't just go to stretching the hamstring as the answer. So the key is, why did it happen in the first place? If you think you overextended the knee in any way, well, what you're going to want to do is not overextend the knee, right? Keep that knee slightly bent. So if someone, one of the common reasons why people do strain their tissue behind the knee, whether it's a ligament or a muscle, nothing nerve related, is because they already overextend their knees anyway. So like they stand, so the back of that knee is behind the heel, which it shouldn't be. The knee, so the side of the knee should be lined up with the ankle. Like I can overextend my knees easily. Like behind the back of my knee is actually behind my heels right now. If I just slightly bend my knees, maybe like 2 to 3 degrees, now I'm more lined up.
I feel like that's more common with ladies than guys. Yes. That they stand with slight hyperextension at the knee.
Some guys can do it too, though. I mean, it's
not all women, but
yes, right.
more common in my experience.
Yes. So that's one of the things, is like being able to identify that, okay, I already overextend the back of my knees anyway, so bend those knees slightly. And maybe if you're a dude that is experiencing this, you can definitely strain or sprain the tissue behind the knee, but don't just go to stretching. Like the first thing I would do is go to balancing, right? If you don't feel like, okay, I don't really know how it happened insidiously. Well, just start by balancing, standing on that one leg.
Working on your balance, not balancing between muscle groups, like standing on one leg balance.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So single leg balancing, where you're just having to sit there and your knee is having to work really hard to stay stable.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a great way to start to train the connective tissue around the knee, right? Like our little balance work that we did on the Eric's pad. Literally standing on a stable surface, shoes off, to a more unstable surface like an ab mat or an Eric's pad. That's going to really challenge the joints. And that's a great way to rehabilitate a joint that's causing you problems. You can never go wrong with building more stability or balance in the joints. So
balance training is helping with stability.
Yes, so balance training is helping with stability, and why is because it's building proprioception in the joints. Where are you in space? Once you've injured that knee, whether if you don't know, like let's say you had a drunk accident and you overextended your knee, or forcefully extended that knee from an Olympic lift, well, don't just stretch it, because stretching it might actually cause more problems, and people don't realize that. Oftentimes it does actually cause more problems, and so just balance. It's an easy way to just start working on the proprioception in that joint.
So is that part of the rationale for doing single leg unsupported movements, like step ups kind of fall into that category because you're on one leg for a period of time without the other leg on the ground, but like pistols and shrimp squats, etc., like you're balancing on a single leg while doing a full range of motion movement?
Yes.
Not just for someone who has knee pain, but just for healthy people as well, to keep them healthy?
So exactly. So doing any kind of single leg movement, doing step-ups, pistols, unless your ankles are pretty crappy. I mean, there's no need. I would rather just do sit down to a box, but that is the benefit of doing anything on a single leg. It's just going to help support the connective tissue around the joints. If I'm sitting on one leg right now, I'm support the connective tissue in my foot is working, my knee, my hip, parts of my low back, and even my neck. Like my head's like working to balance on my spine.
Can you do that?
Oh yeah, you
Practice.
Oh my god, does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're doing a pistol, like stability means not moving in the presence of potential change. So if you're doing a pistol and you're moving up and down in the sagittal plane, both with the transverse plane and the frontal plane, you're not moving in those directions. You're not spinning. You're not falling side to side. And so you're maintaining stability throughout those other planes, even if you're moving only in one sagittal plane.
Yeah. Well, my belief in training and just from taking a lot of biomechanics workshops as well as in school is like we're always working in the 3 planes, right? So in a lifting environment, right, sagittal plane doing a pistol, think straight up and down, but to stabilize in that movement, we have to externally rotate our hip, which is a rotational movement. It's a transverse plane movement. Our knee is tracking out, which is a frontal plane movement. You know, so we really are, like when we walk, it's a total 3-dimensional movement. And I mean, all of our movements are really 3-dimensional, but it is, it can be more biased towards, you know, one plane or the other. However, that's the thing about balancing is it's going to challenge all 3 of those planes of movement because your joints are controlling the torsion. It's controlling the side to side. It's controlling the back and forth. And that's why we do dynamic balance on this knee program. So that's a big part of my piece to the programming for the knee fix is the balance work. Right? You know, we do focus on the knee because that is the middle child, but it's influencing the hip, it's influencing the ankle. We're not just standing there statically, we're dynamically moving with our arms and our legs. Like, how are you moving in that sagittal plane? Right? How are you moving in that frontal plane? How are you moving transversely? Like, can you stay upright when you get a ball thrown at you on one leg? Like a more reactionary balance training. So that's some of the fun that we've prescribed to like make people work on it because while it's going to help rehabilitate a joint fairly quickly, it's also going to provide longevity in your life through just you knowing where you are in space. Like the biggest cause of decrease or increased death rate, I should say, as you get older is fall risk. Fall risk comes from a lack of balance, coordination of the vestibular and visual system, and somatosensory, which is your feet, knee, hip, the joints. So if that atrophies, which it does, we're all atrophying there. If you don't work on it, shit like overextension injuries and like hip instabilities and low back instabilities can happen. So it's always should be part of your training.
Yeah.
I could go on like for hours.
No, we did a little bit of that a couple weeks ago. We did some of that knee stability stuff with the balls and the BOSU balls, and yeah, I've been doing a little bit of that. I mean,
it's fun.
I've had my wisdom teeth taken out 2 weeks ago, so I'm not moving a lot.
Well, you should totally be balancing when you're got your wisdom teeth out.
I've been doing more balancing because I'm not doing a lot of stuff where I'm like exerting myself.
Are you doing this with your?
That actually hurts a little bit, but so I'm definitely doing it.
Okay.
If it hurts, it's got to be good for me, right? All right, next question, constant knee clicking. Now, this person, not only did they say they had constant knee clicking, but they noticed that when they were foam rolling their hips that it dissipated. Yeah.
Yeah, so knee clicking can be pretty common, especially if you're a lifter and you've been lifting heavy loads for a long time. You can get this thing called crepitus underneath the kneecap.
Doesn't sound good.
No, so just because it doesn't sound good, it's not a bad thing. If you're not experiencing, so we don't want to just use pain as a symptom, but if it's not causing you a problem and you're someone that feels like you load your hips effectively, crepitus is going to happen over time. Joints, each of us have different genetics, different wears and tears on the joint over time. Degenerative joint disease, degenerative joint is going to happen slowly over time. For some people, it's faster. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. The thing to think about, though, to help eliminate it as much as possible, just to help the slide and glide of the joint to be as effective as possible is, look at your toe position, right? So you want to, if you're squatting with your toes forward, maybe try squatting a little bit with your toes out just slightly, like 5 degrees, 10 degrees. Does that change anything, right? Does that change? So my toes, I like having my toes forward or slightly turned out because, one, it helps my hips, like my glutes actually worked effectively. So when I squeeze my butt, with my toes forward or slightly turned out, I can actually get the more force production from my glutes versus them turning out. It's really hard to get that same amount of force production. You guys can try it right now. Just toes pointed forward or slightly turned out, squeeze your butt, or toes turned out to a 30 to 40 degrees. It's a little bit different, right? So with my toes slightly forward, my butt squeezed, when I'm driving my knees out, like my knees need rotation to provide stability to them. So like my ankles are going to set up the surface for my knees to be working efficiently. So with the knee clicking, if my feet aren't in a good position and I don't load my hips effectively, then the knee is going to get more wear and tear quickly, right? It should be the second to third joint to be actually loaded, right? I got my spine, hips, then my knees are loaded, right? And it should not be the first knee to load. So just long story short, it's never one quick answer. That's what I also want to tell people. Like, you obviously listen to me talk, you're like, lady, just give me one answer. Well, I'm not going to, because would be too easy. Our bodies are complex.
It would be irresponsible for you.
It would be irresponsible.
One answer.
So
almost every answer you've given for many of these questions was make sure that you have really good technique.
Right.
Like no compensation. Make sure you're doing it correctly.
Yeah.
You always got to circle back to that. The underlying assumption is that if you're doing it well, then you're less likely to have all these problems.
And the knee clicking though, even when I have really good technique, my knees click too. So it's not, but it's less, right, when I actually am warmed up. When the muscle tissue is warm up, I don't just go into things cold. Like, you got to consider warmth. Your body likes warmth and heat. So warm it up well, load the joints well, give it some time to adapt to the movements versus, going into things cold, not being mindful of your movement. You're more like that clicking is more likely to become a problem over time and actually become decreased cartilage under the kneecap or fissures under the kneecap. Those aren't awesome, and those do cause pain. So the clicking, while it's okay in small doses and a little bit, like, use it as a way to, okay, am I loading my joints effectively? How are my feet positioned? Are my feet supple? Are my hips supple? Things like that.
A lot of these things, sciatica, behind the knee pain, constant knee clicking, instead of looking at this stuff from I'm injured, I can't do something, if people just took the time to realize, like, oh, this is an opportunity where I get to learn about my body and my movements, because you're going to get into these programs and you're going to see, oh, I can't do that movement. Well, why can't you? Well, you have poor loading patterns. Like, you're not really injured. You just were never taught how to do this stuff. And when you go to an intro class, whether it's in a CrossFit setting, and you don't, maybe even personal trainers, what's their job is to get you this great workout, so they load up a back squat. Nobody ever sits down and says, like, oh, here's the most fundamental principle of sitting down. Like, do you push your hips back really well, and can you activate your glutes? And you're going to learn how to move well, and it's a learning process to be able to do this for the rest of your life. 20-something years later, I feel like I'm still just an amateur at this movement piece when you start layering all these things in. So it's not, you're injured, how do I fix this thing? It's, how do we further progress the conversation in your brain about single leg movements, mobility, stability? What is the knee, and why do you even have it? Do you care, or do you just want to go and slam barbells all day long? There should be a progression to how you learn about your body, and everybody starts pain-free, and the next, a year later after the honeymoon phase, it's knee pain, low back pain, shoulder pain, whatever it is. Look at these as opportunities that you can progress your knowledge of movement and learn something along the way.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything we didn't talk about in regard to the system? Or I know you delved into it a little bit, or do we want to just unlock that whole thing around your knee system?
Let's unlock it.
Yeah.
Let's unlock it. I like unlocking potential.
Okay.
Let's do it.
That was my call.
Wow.
Yeah, I like that. Well, so we have this. So over the years, from developing an in-person physical therapy practice, we've had a lot of just being able to have the gift of working through MobilityWOD, having now worked with many tactical athletes and companies. Like, people have come to us to want help, but not just in San Diego, right? They want, so across the nation, people have come to us and want us to, or emailed us and want programs. And so, and I also, just for my own personal development, I realized I want to help a lot of people. And just doing one-on-one care, and we've had this conversation when we first met, just doing one-on-one care isn't the way I'm going to do that. It is a way to practice, and I do love helping people, but how am I going to get to the masses? How am I going to help companies and these tactical communities who really need the help? After being a Marine and seeing the crap that people are taught in the service and the level of care, it's like, well, how can I provide that being on the outside? How can I provide companies, you know, a wellness program where they're going to keep their shoulder, knees, low back, like destruction proof? Like, how are we going to keep people who listen to this show and people who we care about and want to stay active destruction proof? So then we had the low back fix, which was our first one, and now the knee fix. And it is a program. So I'll just go into like the assessment piece and why we do it. So while a lot of people just want, give me the answer. What do I need to do to help my knee? Well, I want you to know, that why your knee is having a problem. So I want you to, this is the mindfulness piece, like how I take people through an assessment. It's a short assessment, takes 5 minutes, and it's video-based, audio as well as written, and people learn like where in their knee, ankle, hip, basically, those regions, where they're most limited. So then they go down a track of treating that. And so if we ask people to train, you know, American Heart Association wants people to train 5 days a week for 30 minutes. Well, we're doing 4 hours a week, right? You decide the days, but 4 hours a week of work on this. And so the first 15 minutes of those days is working on the specific needs of your body based around your knee issue being the main thing that's causing you problems. Like the cause is elsewhere usually. Sometimes it could be the knee joint, which will be treated too, but oftentimes it's above or below, or the way the spine is moving. So my first 15 minutes of the program each day is giving you the mindfulness piece. Maybe you need more range of motion, maybe you need some more stability, but you'll be working on those specific things. And then the next 45 minutes of that hour you spend 4 days a week is
practicing moving. And there's like a phase of how we, like maybe we should talk about why we progress people, because people don't like progression, and it's needed. You need to progress back to doing what you love. You can't just jump right into it after 2 weeks of rest or taking ibuprofen. Yeah. So the thing that I noticed the most, so Dr. T was upstairs, and downstairs we ran our full CrossFit program, and then I had a personal training program in which I started seeing people that were really jacked up, coming from osteoporosis, stroke recoveries, like we're talking double back surgeries, like really heavy stuff, and people that were trying to learn how to get back into movement. And through failing many times, I kind of created this little system of like, how do we progress somebody from zero into getting back into performance? Like taking their body where there's literally no connectivity between brain and body, and how do we reset those wires so that we can get back and just into some natural movement patterns. And it starts with her mindfulness, the mobility and stability, but then once we've created that change in the tissues, how do we create some structural balance so we can get rid of some of those imbalances side to side? Maybe we're struggling moving laterally. All of these things that we do in our daily lives that we never think about. Like walking is a very challenging thing for your body if you don't have the pieces that go there. It's very simple for all of us sitting around this table, but how many times do you have to go to the park and you see somebody walking and it's like, whoa, how did they get that movement pattern? So when you're in pain, it's very simple to diagnose. It's like, oh wow, your squat's bad, so how am I going to fix a squat? Well, you've got a terrible bilateral deficit. Well, who says we have to write a program that's perfectly balanced, like a 3x5 back squat? Why can't we do 6 reps on the left side and 2 on the right so we can build that left side up a little bit more? So we spend a couple weeks just finding those imbalances, and then the next 2 weeks we layer some strength on top of that. So get the tissues balanced, connect the brain and the body, and then start developing strength. From there, we can use that strength through some power movements, working on some jumping and landing, especially if people are dealing with some knee valgus stuff. The jumping and landing patterns turn disastrous very quickly. If you're going to do 100 box jumps in a workout, you better know how to land, because each time your knees cave in, there's shearing force on there that is just brutal. And then conditioning. We talk about conditioning, and so many people think like Metcon, or am I going to go run today? Like how many miles are we doing? And it's like, no, why don't we just see how long we can maintain these movement patterns. If you can maintain them throughout the day, you're going to be much healthier than if you can go run 10 miles in an unhealthy way. So we structure it and progress through the 8 weeks, and we just try and layer slowly on these quality movement patterns so that by the end of the 8 weeks, it's not, oh, I have to do or think about these things, but we've actually created default movement patterns inside our body so that it becomes natural. The practice never stops. I think we're always trying to better these movements, especially the balance things that's so important, but at least you have this education system, you have these foundational movement patterns hardwired in your body so that when you get back into class, it's, yes, I can go back squat. And if my knee starts to act up, now I've got this library. I've got an encyclopedia in my head of mobility and stability techniques, balance techniques, breathing techniques, and movement patterns that I can focus on so that I don't have to go to the doctor anymore.
Yeah, and then on the strength side too, or the 8 weeks, like you can, so instead of doing upright movements, you can also go down to, like, let's say upright movements really bother you. So we've given you different options for planes of movement. So we'll be doing things on your back or on your side. So sometimes your body, squatting wise, we may show you the squat in the video, but your body can't literally do that yet. So there are other options, like scaling up or down options for.
And you're going to learn how you move. Like, we slow you down. So instead of, for a lot of the rep schemes, everybody just looks at it, it's like, do 3 sets of 8, go. Well, what if we just did 8 breaths in the middle of that for core training? Like, we can slow you down. We can make this thing look very different. Everybody loves going, like, as many reps as possible. How about as few reps as possible? You ever done a 90-second squat? It takes a long time. What happens in the middle there? You got to start thinking about the way you move. Your glutes are going to start recruiting more muscle fibers. The time under tension goes up so much. So all
Is
of
it going to give me abs?
Yeah, possibly. Deep ones for sure.
Your abs are there.
The ones that you don't see, but
you just need
the
to
important
find
ones.
Them. You found yours.
But yeah, we can change the rep schemes and do it in creative ways. So like as few reps as possible, counting the breaths, and then some of the stuff that we work on, like I stole from you guys. I think it was you specifically. The idea of first reps. If we're doing 3 sets of 8, you're getting 3 first reps in that exercise. But if we do 8 sets of 3, now we're getting 8 first reps, with that first rep being our perfect rep where we're able to actually set up perfectly. We're not dealing with the muscular fatigue. There's just so many ways that we can challenge the way that we move without just intensity and load being the only factors that matter.
Yeah.
So if someone's going through your guys' system, are they still doing really hard workouts and getting a performance benefit? Like, are they getting fitter, or is it just doing a bunch of physical therapy?
Oh, no. It's not physical therapy only. The physical therapy piece is at the beginning. I'm a strength coach.
Body maintenance, honestly.
Yeah, as a strength coach, I'm still very interested in people being strong. I just want people to do it in the right way. You don't have to do it the way I did it, which was how much can we put on here, and you either sit down and stand up, and that's the only thing that matters, or how long can we be really strong for, which is really my goal now of I want to be able to do this stuff forever. I love lifting weights. I love being around gyms, like the culture in them. They're so much fun, the communities, all those pieces we all want to have, all of that, but it's going to be short-lived if you can't keep yourself healthy. The thing that you love shouldn't be the thing that's putting you in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice interwoven program of, like, there's body maintenance tools, which a lot of people aren't used to doing body maintenance consistently. They're like, oh, I foam roll my quad once a month, or, I've done a banded hamstring stretch, every day, but that's all they do, with behind the knee pain maybe. And, well, that's not really the thing fixing it. So there are some more rehabby, regressed exercises in there, but there also are more intense ones as well. And so that's the nice thing, is you can tailor it to what you need, but that's causing you to be more thoughtful of what you're doing versus someone just saying, do this program and that's all you need to do. Well, we're going to make you think a little bit, and we're also going to be with you along the way. It's not like we sell you this program, we're done with you. Like, we have a nice online group. I come in there and answer questions. Anders goes in there and answers questions. So if people have questions about movement, I can tailor to what they need, potentially. That's happened a lot, and that's fine. Like, it shouldn't be just a one-size-fits-all, and it's definitely not. But it does force people to think and slow down. And, like, 8 weeks is not, it's like a small piece of your lifetime to make a change in something that's going to influence your body for the rest of your life. So I think that I challenge anyone who's listening that's like, I don't want to do rehab or do another program. Well, think about what you want in your life. Like what in your life makes you happy? Is it your family? Is it picking up your kids? Is it, doing jujitsu? Is it whatever it is? Is it lifting heavy weights? Well, okay, what's limiting you from doing that? So make a change. It's okay. Like, make a change and think about how long you want to do this for too, not just how short. Like, many of the performance coaches in CrossFit have gotten really good at helping people get really strong for that competition, the games. But those people in 10, 20 years, their bodies, like, what is it? And having conversations, it's not just me observing, but having some conversations with these performance coaches, even locally, they don't care about their athletes' longevity. They only care about right now. And that's sad. So I care about people performing, and I want people. I'm training a lady to be the first female on the SWAT team up in Rancho Cucamonga. Like, I want her to kill it, but she also cannot kill herself every day to kill it. Like, she needs to be doing meditation. She needs to be doing breath work to like downregulate her nervous system. She is more effective when she goes from, training to shooting. Like, I care about her doing her job for a really long time. And I don't think coaches are thinking about that. I don't think, and that's unfortunate to me. So I challenge them to make a change, but I also challenge you guys to tap into this world of goodness of the knee fix, because it is going to teach you a lot about yourself too.
So much of what we have transitioned out of is going from coach to educator too. I think coaches sit in a room and their responsibility is like, I have to get this person a good workout. Well, if you take a step back from that, what you really should be doing is educating these people on human movement, educating them on how to live a healthy life forever. The PRs are great. They get a lot of double taps on the Instagrams. Like, it looks super cool, but what are we really promoting here? And what we're trying to promote is creating these behavior patterns of health, longevity, mindset training, so that it's not so short-lived. We want to be able to do this stuff forever.
Yeah.
Lifting all the weights isn't really the goal. It's to be able to go out and enjoy every aspect of life, physical freedom. And in order to do that, you need to have some sort of maintenance system that you can take care of yourself.
Yeah. I want to do this program. Where do I find it?
Come and hang out with us. Shrugged.kneefix.co. Come to shrugged.kneefix.co. Dr. Theresa and I will be there. We are going to be hanging out with you. We have online coaching for you. There's programs. There's some morning routines that's going to just bring some awareness to what you do in the morning, setting up your day for success, learning how to downregulate your system. There's some accessory programs in there, Guide to Perfect Movement, clinics where we're going to take you inside Dr. T's clinic, inside my personal training program, and we're going to show you exactly why we do these assessments, how you can use the assessments to put a program together for yourself. And then we have an 8-week program where we take all the guesswork out. You just show up. We have the programs. We'll walk you down a path to better mobility, stability, breath work, movement training. And in 8 weeks, you're going to walk out the door with an encyclopedia of knowledge on how to heal yourself, how to be pain-free forever. And we'll also be able to work with you. It's going to be fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah. And by the way, we've been friends for a couple of years now. We had many conversations around training. We've trained together many times. Me and Anders trained together quite frequently. Like, he totally fucking gets it. Like, he's got that 20 years of training experience. Dr. T, whenever I got something hurt, which is all the fucking time, unfortunately, from jiu-jitsu and MMA, like, I got neck pain. Like you're the person I go to see. Like, you've been a physical therapist for Mike and I for quite some time, and with really good results. That's why I keep coming back. So, I can't recommend you guys highly enough. So if someone has knee pain, low back pain, shoulder pain, we'll do a shoulder show in the future. Yeah. I can't recommend you guys highly enough. So my full endorsement, check out their program. It's very, very good.
Same.
Shrugged.kneefix.co.
Yeah.
Someone wants to follow you on Instagram, where do they go?
Go to Movement RX or Anders Varner
That's
or
me.
at Teresa Larson. Yeah.
You got to get the at in there.
So
at
either of
Anders
those three
Varner.
are good.
Dope.
At Anders, yeah.
So new age.
God. Don't forget the at.
Yeah, the at sign.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. It's fun.
This is
Thank
awesome.
you, guys. We like talking to you, too.
Yes.
You guys are our good friends.
Yeah.
And make sure to go to iTunes, hit the subscribe button. Go to YouTube, do the same thing. We're putting out videos all the time, some of which are not this show. That's actually something else. So you definitely want to check that out. And if you're into weightlifting and want to know more about that, go to flightweightlifting.com. We have a free 50-page ebook you'll want to check out.
Nice. Is that a memoir?
Thanks for sticking with us all the way to the end of the show. We know you loved it. Go over to Facebook, share it with your friends. They should be seeing this, and you should be the one to show them how awesome this information was for you.
And if you're the last person in America still using Twitter, share it on Twitter.
Always crushing. I dig it, man. Good fucking